So today we're going to finish up with our first look at Lotus by taking a look at something that I think is very interesting on this map, and that is the post plants. I think the post plants on this map are going to be super interesting and might even determine the way that the map ends up getting played, and you'll see what I mean as we go forward. But this, I think, will be, as we start with this A site, the most common place for the spike to go down, but by this box on either side. But I think that this side of the box is just a bit better because it can be seen, you know, from back here and whatnot. So this, I think, will probably be like the most common place for the spike to get planted on this A site. So let's take a look at some post plant positions and where you might want to play, right? And the first thing you might think is, well, what if we play aggressive and kind of, you know, hold the whole site, right? Is that a good idea? You know, positions like back here, or maybe by this box just in here, like looking up there, right? Are those good positions to take? Well, in my opinion, not really. I'm not going to say that they're always awful and you should never do it, but the problem you're going to have is with these kind of fights in here, is that the defenders are going to have the high ground. And Star Wars didn't lie, right? In FPS games, if you have the high ground, that's generally an advantage in these fights. And, you know, that's no different here, I don't think, where it's going to be easier for the defender to win this fight than it is for you, because you're going to probably have a smaller target than them. And, you know, they're gonna, you know, be looking at these angles and know when they're coming to these angles and checking them first. So they're just probably gonna have a pretty big advantage, you know, coming from this higher ground area. And so, you know, holding these kind of more aggressive angles maybe isn't the best. As I said, it's not that you can never do it. You could come in here, wait for the drop, swing, right, something like that, or wait for the drop on the other side, swing. You know, that kind of thing I think is possible, but again, it's not gonna be easy. And then we come to our second kind of part of the site, which is inside the kind of little temple thing here, the little building in the middle of the site. And you might be like, oh, this reminds me of Bind B site, right? Kind of a similar sort of thing. Aside from, I'm not quite sure it is kind of like the Bind B site, which is all kind of, you know, congested, and you can kind of go around, like there's a little box here, a box would be here on Bind and whatnot, that you could just come and sit here. That isn't there on this site, and it's also, I think, easier for the defenders to get into the site than it is on Bind. And so this area, right, if you're just in here, you're just constantly going to be panicking about, you know, oh, which way are they coming from, right? And so again, this, I'm not sure is that great of an area either, because you're just going to be taking a guess at which side they're going to be coming from first. And this is quite an open space, right, that you can be seen from pretty easily. And so you start coming further and further back, and maybe the next part is like on the other side of the box, and yeah, that probably is possible, but you know, might be expected. You come towards tree, and there almost certainly will be people in here towards tree, by the way. This will be a very common position for people to come and play in these post plants. But you know, if we don't have someone by that box and we're starting to look at tree and whatnot, we're starting to look at, like, you know, not many people actually on the site itself, and you know, we're playing pretty far back, and that obviously has its disadvantages that, you know, I mean, this will become like a super common smoke. Maybe they even smoke that as well, right? And you know, as soon as that spike gets tapped, now you're in like a lot of trouble as the attackers, because you know, you're very worried that they might be sticking the spike and you can't see them. But then we've got little positions like this just tucked into this wall, which, you know, we can quite easily turn and get to the spike. So that's good. That's a nice little position to be in. And we're also defending anyone coming from the stairs, which the defenders probably do want to do, right? Just to create that extra angle of attack towards the site as well. But this does have one big weakness in that it can be seen pretty easily from behind, right? And I think that this is going to be a common theme now for pretty much everything else I say on this A post plant, is that an A flank for the defenders, I think, is very strong. If you can get through there without being detected, that is going to be very good, because positions like this, right, all of a sudden you're, you know, checking on the stairs, you just die from behind, right? It's a similar sort of thing for anyone, you know, staying back here who's maybe worried about the door, right? You're just going to have to worry about behind and the door. That's not an easy thing to do, right? And also, if you do come from behind, anyone who's playing in tree, you can open the door on them, right? And a well-timed door opening with people, you know, your teammates swinging from the other side, you know, all of a sudden this becomes a death trap as well, right? And then we come to the final part of this whole equation, which is, of course, the door. And, you know, a good position, and first, when I first saw this, I was like, oh, this is a great position here, right? We're far away, but we can still, you know, have line of sight on the spike. We can easily spam through any smoke there. You know, this is really good, right? But then I remembered, well, again, the flank, right? What if someone comes there and we're just looking this way? We also have to worry about the door, right? So we're worried about, you know, multiple angles again. This probably isn't great, so instead we probably come in here. And I think that this will become a very common angle overall, right? Where this, you're just defending to check no one's coming through this A link here, and you're coming through the door. You know, that's a big part of it. But then also, if you can get into this position what that allows you to do is then potentially go on a nice little flank of your own. You know, if you do think like, oh, no one's there, right? I'm just going to go behind them. This could be a very, very effective tactic to go the direction that I just went just there. And so I think that this right here will become a very, very effective angle. But this is going to be a common theme of what we're going to go into the other side as well, is I'm a way away from this spike, right? I'm like miles away from this spike. This is what is going to become very common though. And as I said, because that flank on A is so valuable for like taking away so many positions the attackers can be in, right? Be it there, be it there. And you know, we have like good peaks on these people, right? I can create a really small target for them and they have nowhere to run, right? Same thing just here, right? They've got a difficult angle. I've got an easy fight. And then we can, you know, come around here and again, kill anyone in there and then come and open the door, right? Coming on the flank is going to be super good for the defenders. But if that becomes like very, very common, right, then of course we're going to see more of a battle. Maybe you put someone back here as the attackers. If you're really worried about that flank and that becomes such a common occurrence, you know, maybe you decide to go with this instead. And again, then you've got two people potentially playing miles away from the spike. And this is kind of what I think is going to be super interesting about this map, is playing in this post plant is going to be super, super interesting to see the areas that really, really get contested. But now let's come to the B site, and I expect that this will kind of be the most default plant. You could also plant at the bottom just there, but I think that this is just a bit easier, right, for just kind of the spam from there. It's also kind of more available to this angle as well. So I think that this will probably be the area that you want to plant in if you can. That's probably the best place. But again, we run into some interesting situations because this B site is very congested. It's very small, so anyone sitting on the site, and maybe you will have someone, I imagine this is going to be a very little ratty spot that people will definitely try early on. We'll see how that goes. But you know, the site is very congested, so any bit of utility in there is going to probably mess you up because it is such a small, like any raise nade, right? It's going to mess you up. So you end up with this kind of scenario, right? And whether we've come through the door or not doesn't really matter, I don't think, because the options to the, again, the retakers are quite a few, right? We can either come through here, we can come through here, but any defender coming from A can come through this A door as well, right? And there's the C door, and this is crucial, right? That we can't just stand here and spam the spike, right? This is risky because of this door, right? As soon as this door opens, we're probably dead if we're standing here, so we don't even want to really just be out here in the open without, you know, really having at least a keen eye on what's going on at the door. Obviously, they could come on the big flank as well. So a position like this, I expect to be very common where, you know, you're just kind of waiting for the big flank if it comes. And if the door opens, you know, you're going to swing on that as well. But then we might, again, be thinking about, okay, well, can we stop them coming from the door, right? Can we get someone like, you know, in this kind of position where, you know, as soon as they go for the door, anywhere lurking around C, right? As soon as they go for the door, we can just pick them off. We get the free kill instead. We control the door, right? Which could be very important for these B post plants. But again, coming through this A link area as well, you might be like, well, let's just have someone watching this way. But do you want someone here when the spike is planted on B? Because what if, you know, someone comes from down here, right? And as I said, maybe you've all gone off site because it's very congested, or maybe they've got a kill on the player on the site. They just come this way, right? You're worried about both directions again. So again, when the spike is planted on B, maybe you don't want to be here, right? Maybe instead, to control the door on B, you want someone like playing super far back, right? And this is kind of the overall point that we kind of said on A, that again on B, we might have people like back here, right? Just to defend the different entranceways in onto the site, because it's so complex and there's so many different things to have to be worried about, that this might be the best way of playing it. But don't look now, because if we come to the C site, and I was kind of wondering where the best plant spot on C was, and I kind of came up with, I think it's probably this. Like, this is the safe plant, at least. Obviously, you can plant in areas where you can have more visibility, but like this is the safe plant, right? You can't be seen from there. You can't be seen from there, because if you come into this corner, you can be seen from there. So, you know, and this wall isn't easy to spam either, as you can see. So, you know, planting there, I think probably is, you know, the most likely scenario. But again, we run into some of the same things, right? Where, sure, you can probably play this somewhat like a normal site. And this one I think will play out maybe a bit normally, although it is a difficult site to take. Where you've got, you know, certain angles back here, right? Like back here, you can just focus on that. Or maybe, you know, even you come onto the spike itself, right? As I said, this isn't an easy wall to spam. Maybe you create a crossfire with someone there, right? On someone coming in here. That could be quite common or something like that. But again, you have to worry about the door. Right? You can't just be like in a position like this, right? Like this, you might think, oh, I'm just isolating this angle, but as soon as that door opens, you're dead. right? So again, you might be like, oh, we need to worry about the door as well. So maybe, you know, you have people watching on the door just here, right? Like in this kind of position, but then they could come on the big flank as well, right? Like if I'm here and I'm just staring at the door, what happens if someone comes around this corner and just goes, yeah, you're dead, right? Like there's problems there. And so again, one of the best positions for the C post plant, you know, just to keep control of that door, you know, might even be, you know, somewhere like this, right? Where you can keep an eye on the big flank, anyone coming down here, right? You check if anyone coming out of B as well. And if the door opens, you swing from this way and they aren't expecting it, right? But again, the spike would be here and we'd be all the way back here, right? But this is how I think that this map is going to play out, where these post plants are so complex and you might want to be so far removed because it is so difficult, you know, to kind of keep an eye on all the different directions that players might be coming from. And so a position like this for a C post plant really might be, you know, somewhat beneficial. And so this is kind of the overall point I wanted to make, that these post plants on this map are going to be super, super complex. And what I've said in kind of, you know, this video so far, I think highlights a style of play that might become quite common. And I associate this style of play very much with a team like Old Optic, right? With what FNS used to do, where, you know, you go for a default and you leave people in positions, right? So let's say we take, you know, this kind of area on A. Maybe we leave someone, you know, just here on A, kind of by the rocks, right? By this rubble place here, we just leave someone there. Okay, and then we come back to B, and maybe we plant the spike on B, and they're just back here, right? And they're just going to eventually check if anyone comes in there, and then eventually they're going to lurk and come towards B as the spike goes down, right? Or same thing, as I said, right? We're coming towards C, but, you know, initially we've got someone just on B, and we're just going to leave them there, and then come towards C. And so we're probably not likely to do a lot of, like, you know, full 5-man, you know, everyone burst in onto the site, right? Maybe we could with a certain team comp, you know, but maybe that isn't the best way of playing the map. Maybe instead we want to be playing for this very defaulty, leave people in areas, lurk over there, you know, we'll come back this way, then we'll come back that way. That kind of stuff, I think, could be very, very good on this map.